Okay, and then we will actually also broadcast this on Facebook. So give me a second. All right. As we go live on Facebook. Give me just 1 second. Great. All right, everybody. So yes, let me just go ahead and go through this real quickly. And then for property management, it reach out to Mind Property Management. They use some really cool technology to serve their clients. Bill's going to be speaking tomorrow. If you're looking at self-directed IRAs, Bill's an expert on that topic. Steve does some amazing new construction fourplexes. They specialize in fourplexes, but just amazing A-class brand new construction. Hemlane, I think you heard Dana about a month ago with Hemlane. It's a hybrid between full service and self-service. So reach out to Dana. We've got Ria, who's our sponsor in Alameda County. Alexandra, who's an excellent mortgage broker, property management expert, and Oleg that are if you're looking for help with insurance. In fact, Oleg is helping me out right now on a deal. Kamal is doing new construction. If you need help with, if you're going to look at doing new construction, ground up or major rehab, reach out to Kamal. And then Skylight is presenting tomorrow. Josh from Skylight is presenting tomorrow on how to eliminate some of the headaches with hiring GCs and estimating your job. So hopefully we've got a lot of folks that are going to be attending tomorrow. So hopefully you can join us if you're looking at doing a rehab in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brett. Brett, thanks for coming. Let me find you. Let me make sure I got you here. Let's see, attendees. I want to make sure, Brett, that I make you a co-host. Okay, you're now the co-host as well. So, all right, I think we got almost 32 people. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on during your lunch. 1031 and also some of the limitations with 1031s, we encounter those all the time, always some issues. So Brett's an expert in that arena. There's something called deferred statutory trust that he can also help with, but he's truly the expert that we go to for all exchanges, 1031 related issues. Yana, I want to introduce Yana, but Yana, you want to say a couple of words?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for spending your lunch break with us. We have some really important information to share with you today. A lot of people have challenges with 1031s, but I think today we're going to learn a little bit about a different strategy that eliminates the time restriction. So very excited to hear more.
Exactly. And we've also got James and Eric from Habitat ADUs. So if you're looking at, what's your best ROI, sometimes the best ROI is right in your backyard. So they have a new way of doing ADUs. So please stick around for that presentation as well. But with that, Brett, let me know if you're ready to go. We'll turn it over to you.
I'm ready. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm excited to be here, and here we go. So to share my screen, but right before we do that, I'm just going to introduce myself, Brett Swarts with Capital Gains Tax Solutions, and it's a pleasure to be able to hopefully add some value to you right now and help you escape feeling trapped by capital gains tax and the 1031 exchange once and for all. And so we're gonna actually go through this presentation, and it's going to be centered around a client of mine for a deal I just closed, how I helped Dave to finally achieve relief from retirement when he sold his $7.6 million multifamily building and save $1.1 million in capital gains tax without having to do a 1031 exchange. And in fact, this is Dave right here. He sold this apartment complex. It was 128 units, and it was in Georgia. He's actually in Northern California, which is also where I reside too. I'm originally from Mission, San Jose, Fremont area, but I live in Sacramento now with my family. And so I had the pleasure of connecting with Yana and Bobby just the past few months and having Yana on the podcast, which you can also check out. So, but the key to this is we're gonna teach you. I'm gonna teach you really the 3 secrets to an optimal timing, what I call transformational wealth plan. Okay. And so I started the company Capital Gains Tax Solutions a few years ago. As a legal disclaimer, this message is for educational purposes only, and it's intended to give you an overview of how the deferred sales trust works, not to be confused with the Delaware statutory trust, and how it can be implemented. Capital Gains Tax Solutions, we don't provide legal tax or professional service advice. Each transaction is in circumstance varies widely. And so essentially bring your CPA in, right? Bring your trusted advisors. Make sure you're, before you do anything like this, that you bring the pros to make sure it fits for you, okay? That being said, what's going on right now, we call it the perfect storm, and it's facing a lot of baby boomers, but it's also facing folks who are dealing with a lot of challenges with COVID-19 and what might be coming on in the future here with the changing marketplace. But let me start with the baby boomers, and then I'll tie it back in for all ages. But according to the American Bankers Association, there's about $17 trillion of assets that will pass from one generation to the next in the next 20 years. And this is the largest generation in the history of the planet, known as the baby boomers, along with the largest amount of wealth in the history of the planet. And it's about $17 trillion which is going to pass, and there's about 77 million baby boomers in the U.S. alone. And every day there's about 10,000 baby boomers that will turn 65. Okay, and they're faced with some big taxation, and they're faced with higher taxation, but also with current market conditions that are propping up real estate values, such as interest rates hovering near 40-year lows and massive amount of real estate, especially in Northern California, but across the U.S. in major areas where appreciation of businesses and real estate is really, really high. And then you couple that with some of the 1031 exchange timelines, so it make it very restrictive to either find deals that make sense or make it restrictive for what you're trying to achieve for your personal wealth and your personal time and energy. So all of that connected with low inventory is making finding a quality deal very challenging to find. And so what's the challenge? Well, most property owners, they're reluctant to sell because of the capital gains tax, and it's somewhere between 33 and 50% of their gain. In fact, every single day there's high net worth individuals who sell primary homes, businesses, or commercial real estate, and they pay hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in capital gains tax when they don't have to. And they feel trapped, and they're not sure what to do, and they want to be able to have more time, more energy, more flexibility, more options with their wealth versus just having to be stuck in the toilets, trash, and liability. So back to Dave. Dave was in your position about 1 year ago when he saw this presentation, and he has bought and sold properties for 30 years, hundreds of properties, done numerous 1031 exchanges. In fact, he has one of the craziest 1031 exchange stories ever. He was in Hawaii, and he actually sold, he was doing a 7-part exchange where he was putting it all together. And the gentleman on the first end was selling a Rolls Royce, and they were going to buy a burial ground in Hawaii and develop real estate. It's like 7-part series of his crazy exchange. And he actually shares his story on my podcast if you want to learn about that. But basically, he's done this all his life, and he's an expert. And he's going, Brett, I don't want to overpay for property right now. I don't want to be in a bunch of debt. I'm a baby boomer. I'm ready to retire. I like to be more passive, right? I don't want the toilets to trash the liability right now. Like, I don't mind if I find a deal, I'll buy it, but I just think prices are through the roof. Cap rates are very low. And so before COVID-19 hit, he had sold his $7.6 million property, and he actually moved it to a 1031 exchange company. And when he did that, he said, well, how do I buy something right now where the cap rates are at 4.5%, 5% cap rates, rents are already pushed up? I think it's the top of the market, and I actually want to be able to do something else, right? And that's when he said, well, you know what? I'm going to do the deferred sales trust. I think I'm going to do it. But what really, really closed the gap for him was when COVID-19 hit. And so his funds are sitting at the accommodator, $3.1 million. And he goes, I can either go into debt or I can get out of debt. I can either have liquidity or not have liquidity. I can either wait on the sidelines or I can be in this property. And so as a part of that, he decided to do the deferred sales trust, which is what he's very happy he did. And his plan is to essentially sit on the sidelines and wait for the market to shift. And his idea is, look, the market will shift. There will be opportunities. There are people who will need someone to kind of bail them out in a sense, and he wants to be in that position. And so we not only saved his failed 1031 exchange, but he also was able to retire from the toilets, the trash, the management, and he has more time for travel, for liquidity. He has liquidity and diversification, okay? So who is this presentation for before we get too deep into this? This presentation is for anyone who has a highly appreciated business, investment real estate, primary home, or other asset that's subject to capital gains tax. This is worth at least $1 million net of all debt, and the asset has more than $500,000 of gain. That's generally speaking who this is for, okay? By the way, this applies to cryptocurrency. This applies to carried interest. This applies to, we've done deals with veterinarians, dentists, optometrists, self-storage facilities, multifamily. You name it, we've done it. Car dealerships all across the U.S., all 50 states. If you have capital gains tax and you have these challenges, this presentation is for you. Or if you're a business professional and you help people buy or sell highly appreciated real estate or businesses, this is also for you, okay? So what is a deferred sales trust? Let's first define what it is and then kind of what I like to say, the old way versus the new way. Well, a deferred sales trust is just a manufactured installment sale. You may know of it as like a seller carryback, okay? Where you can carry paper. If you carry paper, you can defer tax because you haven't received it. Well, we do a specialized form of that, and the installment sale, by the way, goes back to the 1920s. We do a specialized form of that to give you tax deferral liquidity. So it's kind of like a 1031 exchange, but it's not a 1031, but it does achieve tax deferral like a 1031. It's kind of like a Delaware statutory trust, but it's not a Delaware, okay? But essentially, you can sell a highly appreciated asset, use this tool, this vehicle to defer capital gains tax. And I liken it to the old way. Do you remember the time when you would go to Blockbuster? And I remember, growing up in the Bay Area, we would love Friday nights, right? Because that was the night to go and to see your favorite movie that just came out. And I remember coming around the corner and I see the movie, right? And I see the cardboard box and I see the movie that's behind it. And I'm excited because it looks like there's about one left. But right before you get there, somebody cuts in front of you in the aisle and sees that same movie and takes it from you. And you're like, oh my gosh, I was 20 seconds or 10 seconds or 5 seconds away from seeing my favorite movie on my Friday night. I had everything lined up and now it's gone, right? Well, guess what happened? Netflix said there's a challenge here. I think we can solve this. And now we have Netflix, and now Blockbusters is out of business. In fact, Netflix approached Blockbuster and said, hey, do you want to buy us for $50 million? And Blockbuster said, no. We've been doing this for years, Netflix. We'll create our own. We'll figure this out. And but thank you for there. And what happened? Well, Netflix is now the new way of doing things, and Blockbuster is now gone, right? And so that's what we like to communicate with you today is the 1031 exchange. It's like the old Blockbuster. It's very restrictive, right? If you didn't return the movie within 48 hours or 72 hours, you got a fee. If you didn't rewind it, you got a fee. So you had these timing restrictions, right? You had to do something within 45 days, 180 days to close. Whereas the deferred sales trust, there's no timing issues, right? You have to go into debt usually on a 1031, and this one you don't have to go into debt. You can buy whenever you want. You can buy businesses. You can buy real estate. This one you can only buy investment real estate. This one you can put into stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And so one of them can be completely passive. The other one is pretty active most of the time. So it's the new way of doing things, and we want to equip you with this strategy and really empower you to never feel trapped by capital gains tax ever again. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the 1031 exchange. And for those who don't know what that is, it's just a way to defer capital gains tax when you sell, let's say, a multifamily property for $1 million, and you go buy another investment-like property for, let's say, $1 million or $2 million. So what happens is you need to do that, though, within a timeline of 45 to 180. So are you tired of feeling pressured, rushed, and forced to make decisions under this quick time frame? And that's really the biggest thing. If we can give you back your time and give you space to make decisions, to not overpay for properties, you can create and preserve more wealth. So the 1031 exchange is great for a buyer's market. It's great for value add forced appreciation opportunities, but it's not so great when there's low inventory, right? When prices are propped up, when cap rates are very low, right? When cash on cash is very low, right? That's not good. So we would say, do you prefer to not overpay for a property? I think the answer would be yes. And do you think it's a good time to sell? I think a lot of our clients would say yes. It's especially in California. There's still some highly appreciated assets, but even across the U.S., we think it's a great time to sell. But that being said, the second challenge with the 1031 exchange is if you sell, your depreciation schedule travels, which is not good, right? So your depreciation is one of the best reasons to own real estate. So if I bring in, let's say, $100,000 of rent revenue, I can potentially write off $20,000 to $25,000 per year. Therefore, I'm only getting taxed on about, say, $75,000. But eventually, if you own multifamily long enough for commercial real estate, your depreciation completely depletes, and therefore you don't have any depreciation offset the income. Well, guess what? If you had a property that was fully depreciated in the 1031, that depreciation schedule travels, which is not good. That means you don't have as much to offset. So the intent is to get a brand new depreciation schedule. The challenge is the 1031 doesn't allow you to do that. The solution is the deferred sales trust. We give you a brand new depreciation schedule, and we'll explain how we do that. The last one is just this. Our parents taught us to sell high and buy low. The 1031 is not friendly to that. Oftentimes people sell high, and 180 days later they buy higher. So don't be this guy. Okay, make sure you sell high and buy low with the deferred sales trust. So as a quick background, I started my career at a company called Marcus and Millichap, helping people create and preserve more wealth through multifamily investing, and mainly here in Northern California. In fact, mostly out of the Sacramento area. And so Marcus and Millichap, for those who don't know, it's one of the largest investment real estate brokerage companies in the U.S. and is strictly investment sales. And so I've sold nearly $88 million in commercial real estate. I've also closed countless 1031 exchanges, Delaware statutory trust, and deferred sales trust. And I have my Series 22 and 63 licenses, and I speak all over the country educating people on these different strategies, okay? And so I've been featured on some of these top podcasts. You might recognize a few of these folks. And then also one of the cool ones is Sharkpreneur podcast with Seth Green. Kevin Harrington is one of the guys on Shark Tank. That's a pretty cool one. And Seth and I are working on a deal for one of his clients right now. But that being said, it wasn't always so easy for me. In fact, when I first started my career in 2006, this was not me. I was not Leonardo DiCaprio. I was like one of the people in the back, like figuring out like, how are these people doing this? Like, how are they winning this business? How are they selling these deals? I was a brand new commercial real estate broker. I was just newly married, and I was just out of college, and then we had our baby girl. So between 2006 and 2010 is kind of this journey, and I was trying to figure out how do I make it in the business. And I was a new broker, and for those who don't know, as a commercial real estate broker agent, you either make a commission or you don't. So there's no salary, no benefits, there's nothing. And so I was just getting going, and I always wanted to be able to support my family, right? And growing up, parents were divorced. We didn't have a lot of money, and so I came from some humble beginnings. But I always knew I wanted margin in my life, and so I was really passionate about creating or working in a career that could help create this margin for me. But it was tough. So I was just getting some momentum going, just starting to succeed, and then something happened, and this is known as the 2008 crash, right? And everything came to a standstill, right? And guys who were making $1 million a year were now making zero. And I did what every good entrepreneur does, or person who has a dream. They figure out a way to keep going. So what did I do? I got a side job and a side hustle. And part of the reason I did that was because the average deal, or one of the first deals I did, the prices, the real estate dropped to the floor, and I only was making, you know, after taxes or before taxes, $1,900 on a deal like this, which is actually 7 units in Marysville for a gentleman. He brought this. Check this deal out. $129,000 deal, foreclosure. Okay, 7 units, which is amazing, right? But how am I going to feed a family and support my wife and my daughter with $1,900 on a one deal, right? So I had to figure out a way to keep going. So this is actually one of our favorite restaurants, my wife and I, called Cheesecake Factory. And so I became a server. So by nights and weekends, I'm working here to try to keep it going, right? And people are saying, go get a real job. What are you doing, right? And I said, look, I feel called to commercial real estate, and I love the business. And if I can just stick it out and keep learning, because I was growing personally, and I was growing with my skill set, and I was also growing with different tax deferral strategies. And I said, if I can just keep going, I'll figure it out. So for 2 years, I worked at Cheesecake Factory by nights and weekends, and by day, I'd be making cold calls to help people not lose their properties or to sell their properties. So my goal was I've got to win, right? I've got to figure out a way to keep it going. And again, still was not me. So what happened was my manager at Marcus & Millichap actually brought in a gentleman to speak on the Deferred Sales Trust. And I sat in a room like you did. This is about 11 years ago. And I'm saying, like, why haven't I heard about this? Why hasn't my CPA told me about it? You know, this seems like it's too good to be true. Like, what is going on here? But the more I learned about it, and the more I started to apply the strategy, the more my business grew. So fast forward over, you know, it's been about 13 years since I started at Marcus & Millichap. My wife and I have 5 kids. I've been able to keep my wife home full time because she wanted to, right? We homeschool our kids. She loves that. It's her passion was child development. And now I speak all over, and I have a podcast, and I educate people. But it's really not about that as much so to show that I also started at a place where it was tough, right? And these things you're going to see are amazing, and they're going to feel a little bit complex. But know that we're here to support you with that. So that being said, for 10 years, I discovered the hard way to do this, okay? The blood, sweat, and tears, all of the challenging ways to do this. And how many of you right now want to learn the easy way? I mean, just take you from, instead of starting ABC, we can get all the way towards the end of the alphabet. That is my goal right now. And hopefully, if you can, in the chat, if you're on the Facebook, put that in the comments, but also put where you're from and say, yeah, I'd like to learn the easy way. This will help to help spread this message here, okay? And by the way, if you've been struggling, this is probably why. And first of all, it's not your fault, okay? First of all, there's a perfect storm going on for the baby boomers, and there's also the perfect storm going on with COVID-19, and people are looking for answers, okay? And couple that with your CPA doesn't know about this, right? My CPA didn't know about it. I'm still educating my personal CPA who does the top amount of real estate transactions and tax returns for about every single top Sacramento, Northern California real estate developers, and they still don't know about it. They're still just learning about it. Also, by the way, your commercial real estate broker and the 1031 exchange companies, they don't want you to know about this. They have a vested interest in you just continue on what I call the 1031 exchange rat race, right? Where you're just always trading for bigger properties. Why? Because they get paid on transactions. And transactions are fine. But what if you can have transformation? Okay, transformation, which we're going to dive into. But they don't want you to know about it. And the next thing is, well, if you're tired and you've tried the traditional 1031 exchange, you've no doubt felt the pressure and felt trapped under the 180-day window and the 45 days to identify. And again, we call this the sell high and buy higher. That's not smart. With more debt, that's not smart. Let's not do that. It doesn't work for transformation. It works for transactional wealth building, but not for transformation. So here is kind of the hard way. Let's dig into that a little bit more. Okay, you can do a 1031 exchange. By the way, the 1031 exchange only works for investment like-kind property. It doesn't work for primary homes. We just closed a deal in Cupertino for $3.1 million, and she could not do a 1031. She had $400,000 of tax, but we used the Deferred Sales Trust. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. But that being said, guess what you do for a 1031 exchange? Well, you can hire a broker, 5 to 6% commission to sell. You can sell your property.
No, you're okay.
If you can mute your phone, that would be great. I just whoever
I'll
just
take
joined
care.
here.
I'll take care of it. Let me see who that is. Sorry. Hey, Brett, while you're on the topic, can I just jump in with a quick question from the internet?
Sure.
Denise wants to know if you're a passive investor, in a syndication, can you do a 1031 out of the syndication into another investment?
Couple questions, couple thoughts there. You can do a deferred sales trust outside of a syndication. Most syndications do not do 1031 exchanges in general. Most syndications, most people join. Let's say they bought it for 5 million, they're selling it for 10 years later. They just give the money back to everybody, and everyone pays the tax, which is not good, right? Because you're like, wait, I don't want to pay the tax, but it's too complicated for. So we work with syndicators across the U.S. So the answer is you could do a deferred sales trust, okay, out of it, and it doesn't have to have the whole partners. But we're going to touch on more of that here later on, okay? So that being said, if you're doing a 1031 exchange, you can hire an attorney to draft a new LLC. You have to identify the properties, 45 days. You have to apply and obtain a loan, 1% originational fee, typically in closing costs. You have to do all of these things and hopefully not overpay for a property, all within 6 months. And the key is you have to hire new management. You have to do new leases, new utilities, new laws. I mean, California alone with the rent control and now COVID-19, all the restrictions, it's just endless amount of stress. And growing up in a family who owns commercial real estate, and my dad here in Northern California, and my mom, were like, this is just for what? You know, what am I doing here? Like, they don't have to pay rent, or I can't evict them. I'm not getting enough collections. Like, what if I lose everything, right? So there's just so much stress that goes into owning real estate, especially if you're having to overpay for properties, all right? So I'm going to walk you through how to build an entire optimal timing wealth plan live right now in the next 30 minutes. And these are the 3 secrets, okay? And the 3 secrets are this. 1, selling and deferring hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in capital gains tax, how to legally break free from capital gains tax and find freedom to buy and sell your business or property without ever worrying about a 1031 exchange ever again. Secret number 2, optimal timing transformational wealth plan cloning, how to clone a proven wealth plan with capital gains tax solutions in less than 5 hours and have more time, energy, debt freedom without giving up control or protection of your cash. Secret number 3, my number 1 wealth building hack, how to get the deferred sales trust to work in your favor and become an investment rather than an expense. So let's dive into secret number 1. How to legally break free from capital gains tax and find freedom to buy and sell your business or property without ever worrying about a 1031 exchange ever again. Okay, so Maxine Cupertino. Okay, so I want you to picture a Google executive who is retiring or retired, who had kids and is now faced with this big house that she bought just a couple miles away from Apple headquarters. And Apple headquarters in Cupertino is a $5 billion headquarters. And so prices in those houses around the area have appreciated a massive amount have appreciated a huge amount over the last 20 years. And that's where she's at. She's going, I've owned this house forever. I have a huge house. I have debt on the property. It's not cash flowing, but if I sell it, I'm going to pay capital gains tax above and beyond her 121 exclusion. So what does she do? Well, she looked at the 1031, but she goes, it doesn't work for my primary home. So she used the deferred sales trust to defer $400,000 in capital gains tax and take an illiquid asset, and she moved it into a cash flowing producing asset, okay? And stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or investment real estate, all tax deferred. And so typically what people would have to do is, again, they'd have to feel trapped by this capital gains tax. And so this is just a little kind of a little story for most folks before they meet us. You know, they want to sell their business, primary home or investment real estate. They feel trapped. And what are they trapped by? Well, it's 30 to 50% in capital gains tax. And they're also trapped by the 1031. It really hurts to overpay. They don't want to do that. So they get frustrated, right? And they go looking for properties, and they're like not too satisfied, but they reluctantly buy something. But they also want to retire. They want to be out of debt, and they want to have a passive income stream. Essentially, they don't want to repeat the 1031 rat race with the next property. And we'll tell you more about another deal story here in a minute about exactly that. So what's step number 1? You're saying, well, what would I do, Brett? I mean, this sounds great, and I want to learn more, but where would I even start to be able to do this? Well, the first thing that you need to do is to determine your capital gains tax liability. We'll help you do that at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, free, no-cost assessment. But second, you want to envision your ideal wealth plan. What does it look like? If you could have your time, your energy, and or start a new business venture, right? Or invest in commercial real estate outside of the U.S., or I'm sorry, outside of California with the rest of the U.S., or with multiple commercial real estate operators, or never have to take a call again from a bank or a tenant. Like, I picture that. Like, I want you to draw what that looks like. I want you to envision that. And then step number 2 is this. Let's look at a side-by-side comparison of the different tools that can help you to achieve that. Okay, and one of them is the deferred sales trust, and one of them is often the 1031. And I want you to look at side by side and say, what does the 1031 give me versus the deferred sales trust? I can tell you right now, the deferred sales trust gives you liquidity. The 1031 exchange oftentimes does not, because you only have to own an illiquid asset. The 1031 exchange also gives you non-optimal timing, meaning you have to buy quickly. The deferred sales trust, you can buy whenever you want. The deferred sales trust gives you diversification. The 1031 exchange, no, you're typically just one asset for the next asset, and you have all the liability in your own name. These are very different, right? And so, but the key is, what do you want? Draw a line down the middle and say, which one helps me solve my challenges one way or the other? And oftentimes we find that clients are looking for diversification. They're looking for liquidity. They're looking for options. They want to be able to enjoy their wealth, not be hostage to having to hold on to something that they want to sell. So step number 3, though, is simple. You could just talk with anyone who's been successful with the deferred sales trust. There's been thousands of closes over 24 years, and we have countless amount of clients: veterinarians, dentists, optometrists, self-storage facilities, multifamily, business owners, car dealerships. You can talk with someone who has successfully used the deferred sales trust to hear from their own words. Step number 4 is just to sell and fund your deferred sales trust. Funds are held at some of the largest banks in the world, such as TD Ameritrade, where you have 24/7 access to view the funds online. So again, Dave was in your position 1 year ago, and he goes, Brett, I wanted to be able to time the real estate market. I wanted to buy commercial real estate when it was more of a buyer's market, when it was like a low price market, instead of overpaying in a highly appreciated, highly priced market. And that's exactly what he did. He executed this strategy, and he is waiting on the sidelines to buy real estate when it makes sense, which leads me into what I call the Monday morning quarterback story. This is the most prolific deal in the deferred sales trust history. The gentleman, he wasn't my personal client. I was before my time, but he was my business partner's client. In 2006, he was selling a highly appreciated commercial real estate property in Minnesota. And he sold like pretty much at the peak. And then 5 years later, that same property he sold was foreclosed on. What the beauty of it, though, is he was able to, when he sold, he used the deferred sales trust. So not only did he defer all the capital gains tax, but then he was able to use that same trust to go back and buy that same property that he bought. But here's the key: at 60 cents on the dollar. Okay? So he not only sold high, but he bought low, not using a 1031 exchange, all tax deferred, okay? And that's exactly what you can do right now once you understand how this thing all works, which we're going to get into right now. So, Yana, are you ready to participate?
Let me unmute myself. Yes.
Yeah, all right. So we're going to just do an average deal. We're going to call it $5 million. Let's say Yana owns an apartment complex in let's call it San Francisco or Oakland. Okay, $5 million, and she bought it for $1 million, and she has a $4 million gain, and therefore her liability is about $1.5 million. So the first place we start with is that if Yana does not do a 1031 or a deferred sales trust or any other tax deferral strategy, she's going to pay this $1.5 million of gain. So Yana, do you want to pay that $1.5 million, or do you want to defer it?
Defer, please.
Great. So let's talk about why you would use a DST versus we already kind of talked about why, but let's talk about how. You say, okay, I think I don't want to do a 1031. I think I agree. I'd like to be on the sidelines. So she has this $5 million deal here. All right. And she's going to sell it to this buyer who has the $5 million. They're ready to buy it. But, you know, Yana, guess what? If this cash buyer pays you that $5 million today, Yana, how much did you receive today if they paid you $5 million?
$5 million.
You got it, which would trigger this $1.5 million in tax, right? And why is that? Because it's a $4 million gain. You had bought it for $1 million, okay, and you sold it for $4 million, and about 40% of that is about $1.5 million, okay? So that's how we come to this number here. So we always got to define what that is. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to figure that out. But essentially, $1.5 million is on a $3 million gain. Oh, I'm sorry, a $4 million gain. You're going to get that 1.5. But instead of taking that $5 million directly and paying that tax, she says, no, I don't want to do that. Let me just sell it to the trust, which is what we do at close of escrow. Right before close of escrow, she sells it for $5 million. And guess what, Yana? You turn around for that cash buyer who was already lined up, and you sell it for $5 million. So, Yana, if the trust bought and sold for the same price, how much gain does the trust have?
None.
You got it. 0. So therefore, there's no tax owed, correct?
Right.
You got it. So now the $5 million goes into the trust. Go ahead, Yana. You have a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay. 5 million goes into the trust, but what does Yana get back over here? Well, she gets a promissory note. She has just become a secured lender, okay, and a creditor, a promissory note, and the note is for the full $5 million. Okay, but here's the key. She received a 0 down payment. Okay, 0 down payment, which means, Yana, if you received a 0 down payment today, how much tax is triggered today if you receive 0?
None.
You got it. So in the meantime, 5 million is what is owed to her. She has just become the lender. She did 100% seller carryback. So, Yana, I'm going to pause there and see if you have any questions, but would you walk me through what I just said?
Yeah, so there's basically an intermediary, which is the trust that stands between you and the cash buyer. Because the trust is buying and reselling at the same price, there are no gains to recover. So I'm curious to know, is there any interest being charged with this promissory note, or how does that work?
Great question. Yep, and you nailed it on the head. Just real quick for the listeners who are seeing it for the first time. The trust, instead of Yana selling directly to the cash buyer, it's like a simultaneous close. They're going to sell it to this trust, who's going to immediately sell it to the buyer. So we call it a New York minute. They're just going to hold it for just a split second. It's like an assignment of sale. So they sell it to the trust, who immediately turns around and sells it to the buyer. So the trust becomes an owner for like a half second. And why does Yana do that? Because she gets a promissory note. She becomes the lender she carried back. And she gets a 0 down payment. And so most of our interest targets are about 8%, compounding over any 10-year period of time. They're 10-year notes, and you can structure the payments however you like. Okay, it could be interest, it could be principal, it could be a mixture of both. Okay, it's really flexible, and then you can renew every 10 years for 10 years. And in the meantime, you may just live off the interest and just pay ordinary income tax on that. You get what's called a 1099 INT to report to your CPA, and the trust files its own tax return. But here's the cool thing, Yana. Would you rather have had $3.5 million, right, or $5 million interest to earn interest off of, okay? This is the first part about this, and this is where this is key, right? You're going to save 1.5 million. So on 8%, that's substantial, right? On the extra $1.5 million. Okay. Any questions there?
No.
All right. So I'm going to clear that out. And here's the cool thing. So where are the funds held? Well, Bank of New York Mellon, Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, okay, or in other deals like, guess what? Yana just found a 200-unit apartment complex in, let's say, what do you like, Yana? Fresno? What do you like? Sacramento? You like San Francisco? Where do you want to buy this?
Let's say out of state.
Okay, let's get out of California. Okay, we're going to Arizona. We're going to Phoenix. Okay, 20 million bucks. 20 million bucks. Okay, and this is cool. Right. But like today it was worth $23 million if she would have bought it today. But since she didn't do a 1031, she waited 6 or 12 months, or maybe she just was able to negotiate. Now it's a $3 million savings. Okay. And this is kind of a big deal to do on her own. So she brings in Bobby. Bobby raises some funds, right? And they're ready to buy this thing. And they got everyone else who's kind of jumping in. And Yana goes, well, guess what? I got $5 million sitting right here. How much of that can I invest into this deal? Well, 80% of it is available the next day, all tax deferred, to be put into an LLC, which Yana is the managing member of. Okay, put Y for Yana. And that $4 million goes here, and they can go buy that property. You probably need at least a 30% down payment, but if we put it, you're going to need a little bit more than that. But $4 million can be a part of that, and now she can own it with a group or by herself. I mean, and she could buy this property, and guess what she gets? You get what's called a new depreciation schedule. Okay.
Now, Brett.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said 80% is available the next day. Mm-hmm. And what type of asset does it have to be used to purchase? Does it have to be considered like trade up, like 1031, or what are the restrictions? Can it be diversified into other investments?
Great question. So it can be in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. It could be hard money lending. It could be a business venture. It could be ground up development. Basically anything that has investment purpose and has business purpose, okay? And that's the cool thing, right? So as long as it has that, you can do this. It can't be put into a primary home, and it can't be used for personal property. So the government gives us legal loopholes, and they give us these legal loopholes as a way to incentivize people from not putting their money under their mattress, right? And also incentivize people to actually sell real estate. So what they say is, look, if we can keep people moving the money and the moving flowing, it's a study of macroeconomics, we're actually going to create more jobs and create more tax revenue. But if we don't give them any tools, they're just going to hold on to their properties, and they're not going to expand, and they're not going to create more industry. So that's why they give these legal loopholes. And this is why this thing works, right? Because it's just a part of IRC 453, which is an installment sale. So that is the answer to your question. So we're going to keep going because we got a lot to cover still here. So by the way, who does this work for again? Or a primary homeowner, right? Or a realtor who's helping them sell their homes worth more than 1.5 million or more. A business owner, car dealerships, tech entrepreneurs, dentists, veterinarians, optometrists. It works for collectibles, artwork, Bitcoin, investment real estate, okay? It can be used for real estate developers, syndicators, operators, basically all types of high net worth clients who have highly appreciated properties, okay? That is the key. Here's a couple deals I've recently closed. I actually am a multifamily broker myself too in Sacramento, and I helped these gentlemen sell this apartment complex for $270,000 per unit. And they made a big gain on it. They had bought it like in 09, 010, like at the bottom, and they just crushed it on this deal. But one of their biggest challenges was finding an upleg that made sense, okay? And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. This is another business transaction, a business sale for a gentleman out of Las Vegas, and he sold his business. He's actually a transactional attorney. Okay, this is what he does. He helps structure deals, and he used it for the sale of his own business, okay? A few other recent closed deals and live deals. These are a few other ones that have closed. The largest one was a $125 million deal in San Diego, which also was a part of an audit. That was a no-change audit. The largest primary home was $26 million deal in Newport Beach. And then car dealerships, big deals here. And these are a few other ones that are under contract here. This was actually the deal I was talking about in Cupertino, okay? And so again, she sold her primary home. That is such a key one. If you're a realtor right now in the Bay Area or any place that's highly appreciated, realize that there is a proven solution that you can help your clients right now. You can add value, and it's simply just doing a quick mathematical equation and then presenting the strategy.
Hey, Brett, one quick question. Going back to her, you mentioned earlier that her gains were 400K, but in one of the initial slides, you said that it should be a minimum of 500K, right?
Yeah, so let me clarify. So her liability was $400,000. Her gain was around 1.2 million. Okay.
Got it.
So don't confuse gain with liability. That's why we have the calculator. But the best way to think about it, like I bought a deal for $1 million, I'm selling for $2 million. Okay, that's $1 million gain. Use about 30 to 50% of that, depending on the asset type. Okay, and so that's key. And then the second part of the equation is what's my actual net equity into the deal? It needs to be about $1 million. We do deals at $500,000 too. Okay, but generally those are some of the parameters. So let's talk about the transformation here, okay? So I've been kind of hinting at, transaction versus transformation. What do we see for transformation for our clients? Well, the first thing is, especially for those who think the marketplace is highly appreciated, who think that there's opportunities to come, right now they want to be out of debt and they want to be liquid, okay? But they don't know how to get out of debt and get liquid without paying the tax. So the second part of the transformation is tax deferral. The third part of the transformation is being able to diversify your wealth, okay? And so Yana touched on it briefly. We can do multiple product types. We can do also multiple location and also multiple asset classes, okay? You're no longer forced to just stay in one asset class to one other asset class. And by the way, I'm a huge proponent. I love commercial real estate, and I know all the listeners on this do too, but there's a time and place to sell and a time and place to diversify. And we just think it's a great time to diversify and get liquid and get on the sidelines, and this allows you to do that, okay? And so that is huge part of this. You could put it, you could sell your $3 million house today and put $1 million with Yana and Bobby on a multifamily deal. You could do $1 million on your own deal, and you keep the other $1 million liquid with stocks, bonds, and mutual funds with the top financial advisor, right? So that's amazing, right? You go, wow, I took an illiquid asset and I put it into some of it's illiquid and some of it's liquid, but I'm getting cash flow off of that. And then I'm getting more than that. I'm getting time to enjoy my wealth. I don't have to do it myself anymore, right? I can give it to somebody else and be completely passive if I want to. So that means no more toilets, no more trash, no more liability. Now you might say, well, Brett, I can do that with a Delaware statutory trust, and you can, right? The challenge with the Delaware though is it's a 10-year term, typically 7 to 10 years. It's huge in fees, and you have no liquidity, and the whole entity must move, meaning you're typically trading one single asset and you're putting all of your eggs in that one deal, right? Whereas this one, you could split it up to multiple operators or multiple deals, right? Or a little bit of your own, a little bit of someone else's. In other words, you have more of that diversification part of it, right? Which is huge. And then I think the biggest thing here is the opportunity to grow your wealth at optimal timing. If we know it's a seller's market now, we think the market's going to shift and there's going to be opportunities in 12 to 24 months. Guess what? Real estate is like a big ship. You know, the stock market tends to do these wild changes. Real estate takes a while to kind of adjust. Well, we know the adjustment's going to happen. So now is the time to sell and just wait on the sidelines. And this is what we give you. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. So the next thing is this legacy wealth transfer. We can move funds outside the taxable estate. So if you're an ultra high net worth individual listening to this, we're going to touch on that more here in a minute. But before you move anywhere, you got to say, Brett, how do we know this thing is legal? And how do I know my funds are protected, right? What is happening here? First thing is understand the track record. Before you go with anything, I highly recommend you ask for the track record of the individuals that are helping you. And the first thing is, how many IRS audits have you survived? The answer for the deferred sales trust is 15. Collectively with the deferred sales trust tax attorneys. Next question, how long have the groups been doing it? Over 24 years. The next question is, well, how many have closed? Thousands, okay? So have you had any IRS audits fail? No. Thousands of closes? Yes. All of them have worked? Yes. So we're batting 1,000 here with thousands of successful DST closes. So and the attorneys also stand behind their work as well, which is the next part of this. Audit defense, okay? You want to make sure who's ever bringing something to you, they're going to defend you if the IRS does ask you questions and want to give you an audit. And they'll provide that at no additional charge after their one-time fee. They also indemnify you as the client, which is very important. Next, how do you know the funds are protected? We have what's called direct access control agreement, which means the funds only move with your signature, okay? So you have access to go ahead and only move if and when you sign for that, okay? So that is secret number 1, and now we're going to jam through 2 and 3 at a rapid pace because we are running out of time. That being said, secret number 2, the Deferred Sales Trust Optimal Timing Transformational Wealth Plan. How to clone a proven wealth plan with capital gains tax solutions in less than 5 hours and gain more time, wealth, energy, and debt freedom without giving up control or protection of your cash. First of all, step number 1, sell your asset, fund the Deferred Sales Trust, and then invest. And here's the key, anytime. I say anytime, my friend, because whenever you want to do it, you can do that. We can customize to what you need. If you have a partnership separation, we can separate that. So step number 1, map out a wealth plan. With me, with Bobby, with Yana, with your financial advisor, your CPA. Let's all be a team and work together to help you map this out. Once you map it out, you'll get a sample allocation based upon the equity in the trust. You invest it, you put it in the Deferred Sales Trust, you see it online, you put it into real estate, you put it in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, whatever you want. Let's map it out and let's start to execute it. And step number 2 is actually to sell your assets, right? So sell your home, sell your real estate, and then step number 3 is to fund the trust. And then step number 4, hopefully, is to enjoy your wealth and give more away if you want to, but you don't have to. And back to the kind of the income overview, typically they're 10-year notes. 8% earning target net of all recurring fees at the end of 10 years, and you can renew for as long as you want, every 10 years for 10 years. You can cash out whenever you want, and you can pass it on to your kids inside your living trust. They can actually just step into your shoes, so you can keep this thing going on forever if you want to. So again, what we had to used to do, okay? Stay in our primary home, not sell our business, overpay for a 1031 property, more time, energy, toilets, trash, tenants, employees, and liability. We used to have to become the lender for a single buyer, right? Which is not diversifying your equity. You used to have to stay in debt. You used to have to take up all your time and energy stress, right? Or just pay the tax. Nobody wants to do that. So it's a new way. It's a better way. So who here thinks the Deferred Sales Trust is awesome? If you do, show us some love inside of the Facebook or side of the comments, or start writing your questions here so we can start to answer that. That's going to help encourage us, but also get your questions answered for more people here. So that is secret number 2. How to clone it, right? We're just going to show you a proven model. We're going to work with your trusted advisors. We're going to map it out, and you're going to approve or disapprove of the investments, and away we go. So pretty simple. Secret number 3, is the key, what I call the wealth building hack, how to get your deferred sales trust to work in your favor and become an investment and not an expense, okay? So this is Peter, and I told you a little bit about him before, but he's a baby boomer, and he sold 18 units in multifamily property in Sacramento. And he was driving from Marin, California, just north of San Francisco, about 3 days a week. And his biggest challenge was it's in a tough neighborhood that he's collecting rents, and he's having to chase tenants down. He's having to deal with management, all the toilets to trash the liability, and he's going, for what? He goes, I've made my wealth. I've worked for 30 years. I want to retire. But he felt trapped, okay? What did he feel trapped by? Well, first of all, he had about $550,000 in capital gains tax, and he was tired of the 1031. He also had about $500,000 of debt. And so if he just sold his property, which he sold for about $1.8 million, and after he paid everything, he's like, it's not worth it. It doesn't make any sense. And he goes, but I also don't want to trade for more properties. And so he decided to do the deferred sales trust. So he paid off all of his debt. He has an extra 8% of about $100,000 or $44,000 per year. Okay. And he's like, this is great. I solved all my problems. I said, Peter, why did you decide to use the deferred sales trust? What was the biggest thing? And he said, Brett, I had 18 problems, 18 units. And he goes, I didn't want 36 problems. I was ready to be done. And I'm so glad I found you. Otherwise, I would have maybe done another 1031 exchange. So Peter decided to use it, and he is very happy. And you can hear Peter's story on the podcast as well. But how do we make the deferred sales trust an investment rather than an expense? Well, the first thing was called the net income tax advantage. We can move assets that are typically producing income for you, and we can move it into the trust and let the trust compound that income, therefore lowering your overall personal tax bracket, okay? So if you're in the 35 or 32% tax bracket and a lot of that income is coming from your real estate asset, well, let's sell it, move it into the trust, and let that income compound for whatever you don't need, and maybe let's move you into the 24% tax bracket, right? That's huge. So this is just an example. Let's imagine you had $440,000 of income right now, and $200,000 is from a business or a real estate deal. But you sell that business or real estate, you move it to the deferred sales trust, and you let that income that it's producing just compound, meaning you're not taking personally any income in this given year. You're deferring it to a later date. Well, guess what? Your personal tax bracket just dropped to 240. That's up to $70,000 in tax savings per year. And now your day job, you might retire from in a year or two, or 5 or 10 or whatever. And now you have zero on that 240 side, but in the meantime, the other side has been building up in the trust. And now you start pulling income from there. Or let's say you're moving outside of California and you can establish residency in, let's say, Nevada or Florida or Texas. Same thing, really powerful here. Step number 2, imagine you're a ultra high net worth individual, or you know somebody who is. Guess what? You're faced with what's called the estate tax. And that's with $23 million if you're married, or about $12 million if you're single. That's going to expire in 2025, those exemptions. But anything above and beyond that, you're going to hit with over 30 or 40% of that amount. So let's imagine you're worth about $53 million, and about 22 is exempt. Well, that leaves 30 million inside the taxable estate. 30 million times 40 is $12 million. Well, we can solve that in one transaction in one day. You can sell, move your funds outside your taxable estate. And we're doing it for a client right now. It's a $20 million deal in San Francisco. They are selling and closing in mid-July. And the goal is to not only defer all the capital gains tax, but move it outside the taxable estate. Very powerful. It has nothing to do with a stepped up basis, by the way. This is separate from that. Also, a seamless partnership separation. So a lot of our clients, before they find us, they don't know how to separate their partnership without getting hammered. So back to Steve and John's deal, they were selling that apartment complex. Well, guess what? They thought they wanted to do a 1031, but then the partner didn't want to do a 1031. And so all of a sudden, he's leaving one guy out to dry. And what do we do? Well, we separated the partnership. One did a 1031 and one did a deferred sales trust. In other words, the whole entity doesn't have to move. It's a seamless partnership separation. And also, if the other one does a deferred sales trust, they're separate from each other. They don't have to commingle the funds at all. So that's also a beautiful part about the deferred sales trust. And again, this saved their relationship in a lot of ways, because John on the right had a family emergency, and Steve was ready to buy an up leg, and John had committed to that, and then all of a sudden John bailed on him, and so now Steve didn't have the down payment to do it, and so Steve was able to save his failed 1031. He did this before COVID-19. Now he's even happier that he didn't buy that property, because that property was at the height of the market, and John ended up doing just a 1031 on his own. So the key is it can separate a partnership, which is really nice. And then step number 4, which is key, is just invest in commercial real estate at optimal timing. There's no timing guidelines, right? Purchase at a discount. Then we also can get a new depreciation schedule, which we can use with cost segregation to also offset all of the income or a portion of the income. It can also save a failed 1031 exchange and also get us out of debt. So you should be contacting us at the minimum, Bobby and Yana and me, to say, Brett, I'm about to do a 1031. I'd like to have a backup plan. This does not take up any of your positions, okay? So you can simply have it as a backup plan. You're not forced to identify anything. Just we need to put the language and you need to get with us early, okay? So make sure you get with us early, okay? So we just covered these 3 secrets to an optimal timing transformational wealth plan. And I want you to ask yourself this question now, okay? Try to apply this. If you just modeled what we talked about, okay? If you just got with me, Bobby, and Yana, and we just kind of just sat down and talked with your trusted CPA and also the CPAs on our side and the tax attorneys who do this, and if you just confirmed that this was legal and it worked, right? And you talked with some of our trusted clients here. And then if you were just to sit down with your financial advisor or one of the strategic partners we have, and you just mapped out where the funds would go and where it would be invested and the risk that was accounted for and it was protected. And then if you were just to sit down with me and understand how our role here as the trustee and how we help you to navigate all of this, and we just mapped out how the deferred sales trust can actually be an investment and not an expense, do you see how you could do this? Okay, do you see how you can actually do this? We can guide you through this step by step. That's what I want you to see. Now, let me ask you a question. You probably feel like this little girl right here. She is not my daughter, although I do have 5 kids and I have a daughter about her age, but you probably feel like it's a fire hose, just amount of water, right? And I know it's a lot to go, but let me just ask you a question. Can I get 10 more minutes of your time to see if I can help you, okay? And equip you with this, okay? So, we have training and we have access to online academy. If you're a business professional, we have coaching. Okay. If you're an owner, we have access to webinars, to podcasts, all of this. Okay. That we've put together. And I also want to make you guys an offer too, just kind of show you what this costs because you're probably wondering about all that. But if you use the Deferred Sales Trust and you use our services, this is the number of things that you get. First of all, we are the guides, we are the experts, and we're going to help you in every step of the process. So first of all, you get the white gloved CPA tax attorney access. These are the top tax attorneys in the nation as it comes to installment sales. But also bring your trusted CPA or whoever else to get their education and blessing. That is fine. But you also get the law firm that provides indemnification for you. And also they have a $20 million E&O insurance policy, error and omissions insurance policy, but they've never had to tap into in 24 years, but they have that just in case. Also, transparent 24/7 access to view your accounts online, real-time online updates. You get what's called the DACA SunWest Bank Account Protection, which stands for Direct Access Control Agreement. Escrow has all the funds all the times. The funds only move with your signature, always protected. You also get what's called the White Glove Seamless Transaction Coordination, which is myself, who's sold nearly $100 million in commercial real estate, to work with your real estate broker, your business broker, your M&A attorney to help you with the whole transaction, okay? You also get the professional banker access, direct access to their customer support for the DACA. You also get professionally prepared tax returns for the trust itself. And we work with the CPA firm actually out of Central California. They've been around for 55 years that do the tax returns. You also get seamless LLC formation and funding coordination for if you want to go back into a real estate deal. So we have all of that covered. Then you also get access to some of the top wealth advisors in the U.S., including some of the top folks that have been that you would know of. Like we work with a group called PIMCO, and we work with a group. One of the top guys, he's with Forbes Council, but you also might have your own. And we can also talk about bringing them in. But the biggest thing is you get the lifetime IRS audit defense, which is huge. Okay, so who also has a successful 100% track record, and then as a bonus, you get access to folks like Bobby and Yana who are putting syndications together and deals together, so that they can help create and preserve more wealth through investment real estate, and or if you need access to the proven our professional network for living trust or estate planning services, we get all that, okay? So again, as a reminder, who this works for: primary homeowner, business owner, collectibles, artwork, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, investment real estate. It works for LLCs, S Corps, C Corps, all types of high net worth individuals. These are some of the clients that have closed recently. And you can see why all of these clients, could be paying $100,000 to set up a deferred sales trust. If it could do all of that for them, right? You could see why they would pay that. And I know sometimes it seems like it's too good to be true when you hear these big things here, but don't worry. We have first of all, our reference list that you can talk with. And then second, bring your trusted advisors to speak with us. By the way, it's no cost on our side to speak with us and to get everything laid out for you. You only pay if you do the deal. So you can get started today for 1.5% of the closing cost, okay? And there's about a 1.5 ongoing fee. But you get all of these things, which the value could easily be $125,000. I don't know what your transaction is or how big it is, but all of that put together, let's just say an average deal is $1 million deal. You could get started today for $15,000 when you sell out of the net proceeds, and you can get the whole transformational wealth plan, the whole team behind you, and then you can start investing in investment real estate. And that's exactly what Steve's doing. He's taking his 3% cash on cash return with his $270,000 multifamily property, and he's going to trade that for 9, 12, and 15% in senior housing, mobile home parks, and multifamily outside of California, right? Or outside of his highly appreciated area. So you can get that going right now. If you're a business professional, we have access to our online academy where you can get coaching and you can get on-demand training for how you can create and preserve more wealth for your clients using this strategy for $97. You just go to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. So I'm going to open it up for questions and comments. And so, Bobby, Yana, I'll pass it to you for questions.
All right. So, hey, Brett, awesome content. Thank you very much. Learned a few things myself, so very, very cool. Yana, do you have any questions? We'll take 3 or 4 minutes to, and then we have one more presenter, and then we'll come back for more questions. But out of respect for our next presenters, I want to proceed. But Yana, any questions from your
yeah. So Andres wants to know if there is tax paid on the sale between the seller and the intermediary trustee.
Is there tax paid? I'm sorry, say it one more time. Between the seller and the intermediary trustee.
Yeah.
Is that what the question? So I'm not sure I understand completely, but the tax is only paid on what you receive. So let's say you sold $1 million deal and you receive $100,000 at closing and $900 goes into the trust. Well, you'll pay tax on that amount that you received of that $100,000. Now, if it earned, let's say that $1 million deal, you put all $1 million in and earns 8% in that given year and you receive 5% payout, then you'll pay ordinary income tax on that 5%. So if it's ordinary income based upon the interest, then you'll pay that tax. If it's capital gains tax on the principal, you'll pay that. So hopefully that answers the question.
He says it makes sense now. Thank you.
I have one question from Nancy. Is there a prepayment fee to get out in less than 10 years?
No, there's no exit fees. There's no prepay. We don't lock you in. You know, we'll just say, hey, you're going to pay, $300,000 in tax. Are you okay with that? And you say, sure. And then great, here we go. Right. So we're just going to guide you and give you some options, but there's no prepayment. There's no exit fee on our end. Yep, that's it.
Excellent. All right, and we have more questions. Well, we'll come back to those. So, folks, if you have time, stick around for our next presenter. But so 2 things. If this didn't sink all in, we're doing this again at 6 p.m. today. So if you got time, join us. Go to the meetup page. I sent out the link there. No harm in joining us again. So that's one point. And then secondly, I do want to invite Eric and James. Eric and James, I think you're both on. Thank you. There you go. Hey James. Hey. ADUs and they're back in the news in all kinds of ways in the Bay Area and all of California. Housing is an issue. So Eric and James have a wonderful new company, new startup that has some really novel ideas on what you can do with ADUs and how they went about their business model. And so they're going to share with us some very useful information, and it may turn out that the best investment is right there in your backyard. So with that, Eric and James, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Bobby.
James, are you able to get screen sharing access there?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that right now. And while I'm pulling this up, I just want to clarify, we've got until 1:45, right? So I want to be courteous of everyone's time, make sure that we
Yes.
wrap up well in advance of that.
And we want to leave some time for questions and answers for both Brett and yourselves. So
Perfect. Okay, well, we'll move quickly through this then. I'm James Connolly. I'm the co-founder of Habitat, which is a new company that is helping people build ADUs. And we'll jump more into what that is and how we help. But in short, we really feel like ADUs are the great real estate arbitrage opportunity of 2020 through 2025, especially in California. So let me see if I can skip through this. So the core thesis of this presentation is that single family homes are wildly just undervalued across California. So due to a set of laws that passed, which I'll jump into in a moment, single family homes are by right allowed to be a duplex or triplex, depending on if you live there. That obviously changes the cash flow dynamics of single family homes dramatically, and in our humble view, has led to a misprice of single family homes and a potential buying opportunity. So we'll jump into what that means in a moment. So just for context, an ADU is a secondary unit, granny flat, in-law suite, etc. It's technically an accessory dwelling unit. What you can think of it as is as another unit on your property that you can rent out. So it'll have a separate address, different utilities, people can get mailed to it. It's a legal extension of the permittable space that people can live out of, and you can have long-term tenants in those spaces. The reason that this opportunity presents itself today is because that California set a series of bills into effect on Jan 1st of this year, which I'll highlight sort of the implications of those now. And again, happy to answer questions at the end of the call if helpful. But prior to 2021 or prior to 2020, every local government had their own set of laws. So San Jose and Santa Rosa were some cities that had ADU friendly laws. The vast majority of local municipalities did not have clear guidelines, and in many cases were just flat out restrictive of ADUs. That's changed. So across the state, you have the ability by right to build an ADU. And what I mean by that is that it is a ministerial review of their permits, not a discretionary, meaning that there is no public vote, there's no getting your neighbors involved, there's no, can I do this? I wonder what the planning department will say. You are allowed to build if you can set certain criteria, which we can help you evaluate on a property by property basis. In addition to that, they've shortened the permitting process time. They've reduced the permitting costs. They made it easier to build by getting rid of parking restrictions. And this is something that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, but will be soon. They've removed owner occupancy restrictions. So this is huge for investors. So in the past, if you, in some areas, wanted to build an ADU and rent it out, you had to actually live in the primary residence to do so. That is no longer the case. And for the next 5 years, you can actually build an ADU and rent out both the primary residence and the ADU without living there. So that's huge. And then the other thing, it's more technical, but the setbacks have been standardized. So if you in your property have 4 feet from the rear and side property lines, you can build up to 800 by right and almost up to 1,200 in certain areas if you can hit those setbacks. There is no like lot coverage ratio or other laws that might prevent you from being able to really fill your backyard with another unit. So it works on a lot of spaces, in short. And I think, you know, obviously the people on this call are very savvy. I don't think I need to belabor this point, but you are able to double or triple your rental income stream without getting into the details of it. Obviously, you can build a 1,200 square foot unit in your backyard. We sell units that are 3 bedrooms, 2 bath. That obviously is a great rental income, but you can also convert up to 500 square feet in what is called a JDU within the primary envelope of your primary residence. So you could create a studio as well as an ADU in the back and create a triplex. So obviously a really interesting opportunity, which we think have really great returns. And I'm going to turn it over to Eric to sort of let him spearhead this part of the discussion. So I'll
Awesome.
stop there.
Yeah, I'm going to dive into some very specific returns that we've seen available. This is a sample property that we looked at that's been anonymized, but on Oakvale Avenue in Oakland. And what we're doing here is we're taking a look at a property where the property and the land are already owned by an investor. So we're in a high rent area where the very expensive land is already owned with an existing single family residence. We're going to leverage that expensive land that we already own, but get a ton of arbitrage on the construction and acquisition costs of a new rentable unit in the form of an ADU to, at minimal cost to build and develop, generate the same extremely high yields through rental income. We're building here a 3-bedroom, 2-bath Model I that comes through our modular approach. All in, our development costs here are typically going to be estimated at about $250,000. That includes foundation, utility connections, permitting as a part of our process and cost structure, the unit itself, and the installation work. All in, about $250K for this particular model. And very conservatively for this part of Oakland, a 3-bed would rent for $3,000 a month. Let's go to the next slide and look at one approach to evaluating the returns and the feasibility of this from an investment standpoint. Main thing to take away here is we're going to compare side by side 2 approaches to acquiring a 3-bed, 2-bath rental income stream of $3,000. On the left, we're going to acquire a new condo or standalone 3-bedroom through normal acquisition channels. Bare minimum to buy that in Oakland right now, you would be spending at least $600,000 all in cash, if not substantially higher. Here, since we're leveraging land we already know and much cheaper development costs through offsite prefab construction in a factory, our all in costs are $250,000. So the basic takeaway message here is we're getting the exact same rental income stream and amount of value for a dramatically reduced fraction of the overall project cost. Let's take a look at another method. We'll just kind of look at cap rate here. Basically, we're going to take the $3,000 gross income. We're going to subtract things like vacancy and non-mortgage costs to get our net operating income. So 3,000 minus 775, just a hair over 2,000. Multiply that by 12 to get our annual net operating income. And divide that by the project cost cash. We've got a 10.68% cap rate. If you have a reliable way to get a 10.68% cap rate on projects in Oakland, please call me. I'll invest in all of your deals. These returns are off the charts. And again, the basic thesis here is we're leveraging in high rent areas very expensive land that we already own that's priced very poorly by the rest of the market because people haven't caught on to this update in laws that makes it a near certainty that we can build ADUs. Let's go to the next slide. What about a more sophisticated levered model where we look at cash on cash returns? Here, we're going to use the exact same rental numbers and project costs, but we're going to apply 50% financing through one of the most common models we see for investors financing these deals, which is just doing a cash out refi from existing equity on the existing project. So if we finance half of the project, our cash invested out of pocket to develop the ADU in our backyard is going to be $125,000. When we apply all of the costs to the monthly rent across net operating income, the operational expenses, as well as the mortgage expenses, we're down to just over $1,500 or $1,600 in monthly net cash generated. Taking that annual and then dividing it, we get our cash on cash returns, our levered returns of north of 16%, or actually just south of 16%, 15.8%, which is again insane. If you have a reliable way to get cash on cash returns in the Bay Area at that rate, please let me know. I'll invest in all of your deals. The same approach here is generally true. We're just getting leverage to increase our returns. So why is the market so behind? Why is nobody realizing how great of an investment opportunity this is and snatching up every single family home on the market at current fair market value or even higher, because the incomes from the ADU, the near certainty of an ADU development and the resulting income cash flows certainly support it. There's basically 2 reasons. One, just people aren't aware yet. So everyone on this call is now, consider yourself ahead of the curve. You now are in on a secret that most investors have not picked up on. The other thing is that, the ADUs aren't built yet and people don't generally want to become general contractors. That's where Habitat's turnkey approach can be so beneficial. We handle all of the permitting and the construction coordination work for you so that you don't have to become a GC yourself. The other thing to consider is that we as investors can value homes based on the income that the properties generate, whereas everyday consumers rely on comps or personal use. So they don't necessarily get or realize the full value accretion from rental cash income streams. Let's go to the next slide. I do want to highlight that we are already effectively 18 months into building the ADU empire. These laws came into effect just Jan 1 of this year, so we're 6 months there. I think we will actually be able to get ADUs built and live, given our prefab offsite factory approach to construction, much faster. But if you site build a new detached ADU in your backyard, that's probably at least a year when you think about permitting and development costs. So that's 18 months into the 5-year window that California state government has created, providing a waiver for any owner occupancy requirements. After 5 years, it is possible that state and local municipalities, sorry, not state, but local municipalities and city municipalities will begin to require owner occupancy on new ADU construction again. So you definitely want to get these built prior to the waiver period ending. Also worth flagging, it's not just about ROI. We, both James and I, are very passionate about the community and societal benefits of ADU development as well. Just to highlight a few, especially during COVID-19, there's a tremendous demand for detached home office space as more people work from home. We're also seeing a ton of societal and health benefits for the elderly population to be able to come home and stay away from retirement communities that have been a bit of a health risk recently. The other thing to point out here is that commute reductions, as we can bring lower income individuals closer to their workplace, as we get a ton of knock-on effects that are good for families and communities, reducing air pollution from extensively long commutes, but also just helping families spend more time together. It has positive knock-on effects for education, et cetera.
Cool. Thank you, Eric. I'll take on this piece. So I founded this company because my mom was trying to build an ADU on one of her rental properties up in Santa Rosa. And I just uncovered how incredibly difficult it was to actually manage this. Most people don't have their full-time every day to be a developer. And I just saw through that experience how difficult it was. So we created Habitat to help be a turnkey solution for building an ADU. So in a typical ADU process, you need to design a unit, you got to create a site plan, you can figure out your financing, you have to go get permits. Then once that's all approved, you need to actually build it and find GCs to quote on it and install it. And that can be very challenging if you're going with the traditional route because you don't really have visibility into the costs because contractors don't really know what it's going to cost them, timelines because they get busy or distracted. And the quality is inconsistent because you have no idea what they're going to be building with it most of the time. So it's very tough to pull this off, and quite frankly, it breaks the model in a lot of cases when a GC might quote you $800 a square foot to build a unit, and we can do that at a fraction of the cost. So what we do here at Habitat is we manage the entire thing for you. So come to us. You have a property. We evaluate the feasibility. We help you design it. We get permits for you. We are a builder ourselves, so we are a licensed GC that is insured. So we manage the entire process. To the best of my knowledge, we're the only player in the state that does that. So kind of in a league of our own. Because we do a modular approach, we can save a ton of money on costs. We're substantially faster, and we're super convenient. So that's kind of the pitch. I'll go into the details as to why we're so much better. But yeah, I mean, we're quoting $600 a square foot here. Feel free to reach out to me afterwards. I can refer you to GCs. Acton ADU is one of our largest stick built competitors. You can go to a webinar and they'll quote you $600, $700 a square foot to build an ADU. So it's just a league of its own in terms of cost. Obviously, lots of flexibility there. If you have other reasons for building an ADU outside of an investment return, that's a great approach. The prefab players are more expensive. I can get into why that is. We are a HUD builder, which allows us to save money. In addition to that, we are also the construction company. So we're also able to lower our rates. So that's one of the big value adds that we provide. In addition to that, we're one of the only people in the world that will actually guarantee you a max price on building this. So you can go into that with confidence in that variable in your model. We have a huge range of floor plans. So we highlighted a larger unit, the Model I, but we can build, like I said, 1,200 square feet. We can build as small as 426 square feet. range of 1 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms. We can change the floor plans. You can see our prices there. Again, these are our all-in costs. What you'll see is that increase in impact fees line. What that is telling you is if you build under 750 square feet, you save money in impact fees. The reason I highlight that is because we've designed our units, as you can tell, to optimize for cost savings. So like we don't plan on making money on the construction. Our goal is to do that as cheap as possible. And in educating you and your potential clients that those kind of cost savings are available is something that we do throughout the design and build process. So we'll be helping you think through what the optimal solution is for your property. That's part of the value prop that we bring. But again, this includes everything. So I mean, not only are you going to be like fully installed with permanent foundation and utilities, and the unit's going to show up completed with a deck, etc. But you will also have like the entire inside of the unit done. So you're not just going to get the shell. You get cabinets, you got floorings done, tiled showers, everything besides furniture, which we're even debating offering that as well. So it really is turnkey as it gets. Our units are beautiful. They are obviously more rigid in terms of our design abilities than as a custom stick builder. But quite frankly, if this is a rental property and you're looking for quality materials, we have a huge range of finishes. We can really get the desired effect that you want for the property, both on the lower end and higher end. So again, a lot of flexibility. Investors tend to love that. One of the key advantages, again, is that we're very fast. So because we can build everything in the factory, we can get permits pulled while we're building the unit and do the install work in the matter of months. Really, the only thing that is limiting us is our backlog. There's a ton of demand for this right now as people are sort of catching on. So just something to keep in mind. There is definitely an advantage to sort of getting into our queue earlier. But generally, you know, we think that we can build the unit conservatively in 8 months. I think if you talk to most general contractors, they'd quote you 1.5 years, 2 years to finish this project. So in terms of an ROI and just locking up your capital, it's obviously a huge advantage. In addition to that, and we can get into sort of the benefits of factory build systems, but we have substantially more control over the unit. I mean, one of the good sort of analogies that I like to make is that if you were to order a Honda from Honda, you wouldn't ask them to build it in your driveway because it's going to be inconsistent and things will be wrong and it's not beautiful, but like and perfect like the way it would be in a factory. Same thing with a home, right? Like you build something on site, if it rains, if the materials are delayed, if the contractor, whatever it is, quality is going to change. In the factory, it's hyper controlled, it's regulated by the state, precision built, doesn't get delayed. A lot of advantages to doing it that way. Yeah, this is sort of repetitive, but again, like the way our process works is you reach out to us, we will help you evaluate your property. If you want to continue, we will quote out the project both for the site specific work and for designing your unit, so you have a clear understanding of what your project's going to cost you, and then from there we get you permits and we begin construction. So really, it's as simple as it can get. We can get your project going in like as little as 3 meetings. So the way our process works in detail, and we'll send a follow-up with this after the meeting, but the way that we typically work is that we'll do a virtual consultation with you, talk to you about your options, your financing, your property, evaluate whether or not this is even feasible. We can do most of that just from behind our computers, so it's very quick. We're willing to do that for free. If you want to continue with the project, what we do is we take $1,000 deposit or project proposal fee to evaluate your property in detail or your project in detail. So what we'll do is we'll design your unit, pick all your finishes, your floor plan, etc. Check with the city whether or not we can build that and confirm what we can and can't do, and send a contractor to your site and evaluate what the costs are going to be of your specific property. So do you need to use a crane? Should we take down a fence? Is there demo work? Is there a tree in the way? There's always something. Quote all that stuff out, give you an idea of what that would cost. If that quote is something that you're excited about doing, then we only ask for an additional $4,000. From there, we get you your permits, and then you only fund escrow and begin the construction once we've received permits and we are ready to go. So there's no risk at all. If we don't obtain permits for you, we'll refund your money. If we come to your site and it's completely infeasible and we miss something over the phone, we'll refund you your money. So there's really no risk along this process. As part of an incentive for early adopters, we're willing to drop that $1,000 fee down to $500 for members of this group. Eric can follow up with more details as to that. But again, if it's something that you're serious about doing, that's the first step in us evaluating the feasibility of the project. And that's really it. And then again, I'm James. I'm the co-founder and general manager. Eric is my right-hand man in all business development related initiatives, including this one. We're very excited to work with you guys. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us through either of these channels. And thank you again for the time. And I think I'd love to just turn it over to you guys and see, what kind of questions we can answer.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Thanks, James.
Yeah.
Wonderful what you guys are doing there. And Yana, you got any questions in your?
Of course I do. I do. So I have a question regarding financing and terms. What does that loan typically look like, and how much of a down payment are they expected to put up front?
James, if there's actually a slide towards the bottom below the archive that I took out of, there we go. Perfect, thank you. So we really see 4 buckets of financing. Now, one thing I will say is that we are at sort of the vanguard of ADU development here. Our approach with HUD code development is absolutely innovative, and usually with innovative, extremely high yield development opportunities, lenders will lag behind. So there are not perfect financing solutions out there, but there are still a ton of feasible financing options out there. These are the 4 buckets we see our current customers using to fund the budget of their construction projects. The first is just using cash savings, 401k loans, friends and family. It's a tale as old as time, and generally works for customers who have that sort of liquidity available to them. The second, and probably the most common option we see, is customers leveraging their existing home as it sits today, and any equity that they've built up in the home already, to pull cash out to fund the construction project. That would be usually a HELOC or a cash out refi. Those rates are going to be phenomenal. It's a super easy, super simple, super well understood financial product. You get the money in your bank account and you can do whatever you want with it. So that works great. There are some emerging solutions, and for folks that are interested, I definitely recommend you reach out to us to talk about the specifics of your project. But in the construction and renovation loan bucket, there's a lot of innovation happening, like literally this month, with Fannie and Freddie, as well as with lenders, to try to offer more construction and renovation loans for people looking to build ADUs, and that would be loaning against the future as improved value of your property rather than the existing value. They're a lot more difficult to qualify for, and they're generally a little bit more burdensome in terms of cash flows. But you can generally get, I'd say, about 50% of the budget needed for a project. So our units, call it 200K, 250K, you can get about 100 or 125K from a construction loan generally for this type of ADU development. There are also interesting alternative financing sources available: home equity co-investors, personal property loans, some interesting things, but really all depends on your personal situation.
Okay, and then the last question, you mentioned that there is no specific lot size or zoning requirements as long as you meet the setback criteria?
Yeah, if
Correct.
we jump down to I think it's the very last slide in this deck. Sure. Yeah, basically what the state has done is come in and railroaded local and municipal governments and said, you are not allowed to prevent ADU development anymore. So any laws that you used to have that made it difficult to build ADUs, such as maximum square footage requirements on ADUs, floor area ratios, parking requirements, there are all these things cities did to make ADU development really difficult. The state has said, we're done with that. We're going to incentivize ADU development, and we're going to create standard, really achievable guidelines. James can chat through some of the specifics on individual units. Like there's an 800 square foot. It's a little bit hard to describe, but it's a maximum requirement that a city can impose. But some of the things we look for in a backyard are the setbacks. So 4 foot from the side and rear, 10 feet from the home. That's going to result for our units, at least, in a backyard space that's at least 20 feet wide by 50 feet long, or flipped 90 degrees. The other big thing, and this would be true for any sort of modular prefab construction where you're building units offsite in a factory, no major power lines directly in front of the home. That is difficult for a crane to lift a unit over. So that's one huge thing to watch out for. Or if there are major power lines, there at least would need to be a substantial side access of about 12, 13 feet to be able to truck a unit through a side yard. And then generally things we look for that aren't prohibitive but help reduce costs are flatter grading. So sites that aren't on a slope. That's true for any foundation, just less expensive to put a foundation in when it's flat. And then the more open this site is and the closer you build to the primary residence, generally the lower your costs will be as there's less site prep, demolition, or trenching work needed to set up the ADU.
Thank you.
Yeah, Yana, was that your question? It was just what are the rules for?
Yeah, I was just
Feasible.
asking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I have a question from Debbie. How do you quote the price? When do you provide the final price? And then how do you handle like scope changes?
Yeah, great question. So it's in two phases. So obviously we have our initial prices on our website. You give us a call, look at your property. We go, okay, yeah, we're going to probably need a crane or something. We can quote some stuff just sort of from afar, but don't hold us to that. We go to your site with one of our construction managers. That's when you get the first quote. Looks at everything we need to do. How's the drainage? What's the slope like? Do we need a crane? Do we have to take down a tree? Evaluate all that, give you a project proposal. At that stage, we are 90 to 95% confident the price will not change. From there, we go get your permits. After you give us the money to go get your permits, we get specific literal quotes from all of the GCs for every line item. From there, you have an exact dollar amount that you can stand by at the time of building. So you don't have to fund the account until you know exactly what you're paying at that stage, guarantee those prices. If you decide during the process that you would like us to build you a deck or do landscaping, or there's a material change in something that we are unaware of, those will be handled by a case-by-case basis. If it's our fault, we will take ownership of that and cover your costs. If it's something that you've elected to change, what we'll do is just tack that onto our scope of work and project manage that for you. What we see a lot of time with people opting for us to do landscaping work in addition to their unit, or they actually decide, they do want to rebuild a fence or whatever it is that might have been taken down during the construction process. So that happens all the time. It's totally normal. We typically, like what we say is we like to make our money on the unit. It's flat rate. It's what it is. The construction, just manage that cost, and we have no incentive to try to have you spend more money on construction or to sell you more services. We just want to do whatever you need to finish your project.
Got it. One more question. How can Debbie get hold of you? Where's the contact slide?
I love that question. We have that right here on slide 24. Also happy to follow up. I'm not sure, Eric and Bobby, how you'd like to share information. Maybe we can send the deck to everyone that attended or something. But we will make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll make sure to get you our contact information.
One thing I'll point out is obviously you can just go to habitatadu.com right now, and you can enter a property address, and that gets you into our system where we start working on a completely free virtual site feasibility assessment. But then to get to a more concrete, certain proposal, that's where we have typically the $1,000 refundable deposit to get us on site and to get you into design sessions so we can narrow down those costs. For anyone who mentions this meetup group or this call, we'll reduce that deposit amount from 1,000 down to 500 just to make it easier for everyone to get started.
Hey, and one question, guys, from Denise online. She wants to know if this service is offered out of the state of California.
Not yet, but I'd be really curious to talk to you if you do have a property that you're evaluating. We'd love to sort of start building some showcase units across the country. So that's actually really interesting to us. We're probably willing to give you a discount if you would be willing to sort of learn with us as to what the implications are of those areas. We've done a research analysis of the areas that do have ADU friendly laws. So, if you've got a specific area in mind, let us know and we can quickly evaluate whether or not you can even build one and what the rules are.
Yeah, she's in Miami. She did ask that question earlier when you were talking about the laws changing. Was that only California specific? So it sounds like it was, but maybe Miami has similar laws, or Florida.
So those laws that we outlined are California-wide specific. Those same set of laws are a close version of them are being passed in Washington, in Portland. There are ADU laws that are in Chicago and Virginia and Texas and Hawaii. So it's all over the place. I don't know Miami specifically, but I'm fairly certain we looked at that and there are some ADU guidelines. So I will have to double check exactly what the rules are, but if there is an opportunity to build an ADU there, we'd love to talk with you about that. That'd be really interesting to us.
And then lastly, JR wants to know if there are any restrictions in the city of San Francisco here locally.
No, so San Francisco can't do anything about it. I mean, the entire state, no matter, you could build in Palo Alto, San Francisco, wherever. I will say in San Francisco, generally installation is a little trickier. But that being said, if you're able to pull it off, the rental income is insane, right? So if you've got a property in SF, we'd love to work with you. We also don't have a showcase unit in SF, and I would love to build one. So please reach out to us about that. What I will say is I even think San Francisco might be ADU fairly progressive. I think if you're interested in doing a conversion, which we don't do, but you should evaluate all your options. If you're able to pull that off, if you have a garage, for instance, that could be really interesting as well. Tends to be more expensive than our builds, funny enough, even though you're just converting a space, you tend to not save much money. But sometimes in SF, you just don't have a backyard to work with. But
so
yeah,
you
please
mentioned
reach out to us.
JDUs. You mentioned JDUs earlier, and you just mentioned you don't do conversions. So really,
Yep.
are you only doing detached ADUs?
That is correct. Yeah, we just focus on that. That's our bread and butter. I think one day we might try to do conversions and roll that out, but for the time being, what we can do is just help refer you to a GC in the area that might be able to do it. Unfortunately, we can't really vouch on in terms of their product or their quality or their time frame or their costs. But yeah, that is an option. And JDUs typically are only conversions. One of the prerequisites is that it's within the primary envelope of the primary house. So you can't just build a JDU detached, unfortunately.
How do HOAs stand in the way of this?
Great question. That's actually one of the laws they prevented as well. So HOAs have no rights to prevent an ADU development. They might be able to hold you up to design standards, which we can match, but they are unable to prevent you from building, which is
wow, that's amazing.
So, I know. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, not to stand on my stump here and give a speech, but in Vancouver, they've been ADU progressive for quite some time, and 35% of single family homes have ADUs. Vast majority of the time, it's family. Provide space for elderly folks, or your child that can't afford to live in the Bay Area but has work, etc. And when you look at the housing crisis in California, we're short 2 or 3 million homes across the state, and we have less than a 1% penetration rate of ADUs. So if we were to get 25% of single family homes to have an ADU in California, we build 2 million homes. We could single-handedly combat the housing crisis using this law change. So very passionate about that, and I think that there's just a ton of positive externalities for like community at whole to provide affordable housing to folks. So yeah, it's something that keeps us working hard.
Good stuff, guys.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we want to open up Q&A back to Brett? All inclusive, guys, if you have any questions regarding anything we covered.
Exactly. For Brett, for James, for Eric, anything.
Hello.
Yep. Go ahead. Hey, Ken.
How many ADUs have they completed?
Great question. 0. So laws took effect in January. So we started selling these in January. Just got our first set of permit approvals for our first 5 to 10 projects, and we just ordered those homes from the factory. So our first unit's going in Oakland in August. So we're about 6 weeks away from finalizing that. We're going to break ground next month, but that's one of the big questions we get a lot. And unfortunately, it's just very early in our company's history, but we'll have some showcase units for you and some happy customers by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think it's worth saying there, James, we don't want to mislead people too much. Our head of construction and operations and your co-founder is Zephan McMinn, who's the former CEO of Blue Homes, which was sort of the preeminent modular home builder in California. So there's a ton of experience on the team, just not with this specific business entity.
Right. Yeah. My co-founder's installed hundreds of homes, and homes at a much higher price point, like 1.5 to $2 million. So he knows exactly like the level of quality required to deliver a satisfied a satisfying customer experience to customers.
I had one more question.
Yeah.
Had you all thought of going down as well as up in terms of, I know this is California, we're earthquake country, but I don't know if you guys have factored into building a basement as well as a first level to give you more livable space. As you guys delved into that?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great question. We actually had a customer recently design a wine cellar underneath their ADU, and they got that approved. It's a case-by-case basis. The local planning department can say no to that if they wanted to. By right, they don't have like a we'd have to examine that specific use case is, I guess, the short answer. But it's not impossible.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions for Brett or James, Eric? I think we have one more from Zachary. What about the fees for water, meters, and sewer? As I understand, the state did not deal with these districts. So who pays for water meters and sewer? I mean, that would be the homeowner, I would imagine.
Yeah, so that's included in our costs. So we budget an average based on the projects that we've seen that we're very confident in. What we've seen is that local governments have had to reduce their impact fees. They used to be much higher than they are now. So that's helped a lot. It is still a case-by-case area. That's one of the big things people get hung up on. We need to submit your permit application to get exact cost figures for what those permit costs are in every specific project. But for the first batch that we've seen, you know, we are getting quotes for $15,000, $12,000, sometimes as little as $7,000 in total permit fees. So that's good. And in terms of like water connection and setting up a separate meter and trenching and all that stuff, included in the cost.
Very nice. Brett, I have a question for you from Nancy. In the case of the DST, would the couple lose their 500K capital exclusion?
No, you don't lose the 121 exclusion. For the listeners who are curious what that is. So if you own a primary home and you lived there the last 5 years, you get $250 if you're single as a capital gains tax-free, or $500 if you're married. So let's say you bought a house for $500,000 10 years ago, and now it's worth $1 million. Or if you're married and you sell it for $1 million, you're tax-free, so you're good to go. All right. If you were married, if you're single, you'd have $250,000 of liability. So you don't lose it with the deferred sales trust. You just don't use it until you start taking cash. So the time you use the exclusion is as you start to receive back that capital gains tax. So what a lot of our clients will do is they'll just slowly, kind of bleed the trust out as they need the income, right? We like to say it's your money. How and when do you want to receive it? And let's make it as tax optimized as possible. And as you receive it, you'll get a partial 121 and you'll get partial tax depending on the proportion of your deal. So I think that answers the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you, Brett. I think last question is from Raymond to Eric or James. Does the company sell or perform or self-perform or sub out the work?
Great question. So it's a combination. So we don't have electricians and all the various technicians that we are required to install these on staff. What we have is a network of installers that we've worked with, that we trust, that we've vetted. We are the GC on record, so we technically are the one that is insured, that qualifies to work, and is responsible for its performance. But we will sub out specific functions per project, just based on the needs and based on the location of the deal.
Got it. Yana, you got any okay, there's one from Wellington for Brett. Are there any minimum property values to do a DST? If I heard correctly, Brett said 1.5 million.
Yeah, so the minimum deal is typically about $1 million net of all closing costs, right? We do some as low as 500, but we've seen where the kind of the magic number is about $1 million. Our average deal is about 2.6 to 2.9 million, and we're deferring somewhere around $400,000 to $500,000 of liability. Okay, and so we have a deferred sales trust calculator. Just go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com and you can get that going right away. Just to get a side-by-side comparison. And then we also have the academy too, which you can get clarity on that. So minimum is about $1 million, and then liability at least $100,000 or greater, which typically means about $300,000 to $500,000 of gain to get that $100,000 of liability deferred.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. I think that was it. Thank you, Brett. Thanks, Eric and James. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll, again, 6 p.m. If other questions come to mind, if you're free, join us at 6 p.m. We'll do this again.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. All right.
Have a good one.
See you later.
Bye.
Okay.